This happened a few months ago when I was 25 and working night shifts in the ER to pay off my student loans. I had been a nurse for almost 3 years, so I thought I was used to what happened there. I knew the sounds and smells well, and how the fluorescent lights flickered. But I've never stopped thinking about what I saw and heard during those shifts. The first night was like any other. I started my shift and felt it was routine. I was arranging supplies and checking on patients. I walked past a private room and heard whispers. They were soft but urgent. I stepped in to check on the patient. As soon as I entered, she stopped talking. She just stared at me with wide, unblinking eyes. My heart raced. I felt cold but told myself it was my imagination. After a beat, I brushed it off and returned to my duties. The second night was stranger. While I prepared medication, I heard laughter echoing down the hallway. I thought it was just stress playing tricks on me, but no one else seemed bothered. When I asked a coworker about it, they shrugged. "It's just this place," they said. I laughed nervously but felt something tighten in my chest. Then came the third night. I was at the nurse's station, writing notes from my shift. Around midnight, I noticed my medication cart. A few items had shifted or gone missing. I couldn't explain it. It felt like someone was watching me. I turned suddenly, but no one was there. My heart raced, the laughter echoed again. This time it was right behind me. I froze, unsure if I should turn around. I finally looked. A shadowy figure stood at the end of the hallway. I couldn't see any features, just the outline. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't move. When I blinked, it was gone. Maybe I was just tired, or maybe I was losing my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the hospital. Days later, I learned that the patient in the private room had a history of violence towards staff, yet no one recalled her strange whispers. I was left with so many questions. Were those incidents a part of my exhaustion, or was there something more in that place? I still wonder about that night. The shadows seemed to hide secrets I might never understand. As I stood there in the silence of the hospital, it haunted me. Then I heard the voice again, echoing down the hall. It was so familiar, so chilling. I realized it was only the beginning. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I didn't know what to do. All I could think was that I didn't want to be alone in that place anymore. The laughter came back, louder this time. I gripped the counter tightly. I was scared to move. I didn't want to see what was waiting for me in the dark corners of the hospital. I took a deep breath and let it out slowly, trying to calm my racing heart. But the voice echoed again, and I knew this wasn't over. I stood frozen at the nurse's station, bracing myself for whatever shadow might emerge from the depths of the hallway. My mind raced a mile a minute, trying to connect the dots of what I had experienced. The laughter felt like a cruel joke, taunting me for stepping into that silence. Then, something pulled my attention again. The lights flickered above, casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. I leaned in closer to my laptop, trying to focus. But the whispers had returned. They swirled around me, hard to pin down. It was like a haunting melody that brushed against my ears, both clear and dissonant. My breath quickened. Was it just my imagination, or was there more to this? I decided I couldn't ignore it any longer. I needed to explore the hospital, confront whatever was lurking there. Gathering my courage, I stepped away from the nurse's station and headed towards the private room where I'd first heard the whispers. The fluorescent lights buzzed above as I walked, the sound almost comforting against my high-strung nerves. As I approached the door, it cracked open slightly. My heart raced again. Should I knock? Should I go in? I took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The patient lay in the bed, but her eyes were closed this time. A weak moan escaped her lips. I hesitated, unsure of what to do. Then, I noticed something strange on the floor near her bed. A small, crumpled piece of paper. Curiosity piqued, I knelt down to pick it up. When I unfolded it, my breath caught in my throat. It had a name scrawled across it, Maya. Beneath it were more frantic scribbles that I struggled to decipher. A mixture of fear and urgency washed over me. Was she trying to warn me? I looked back at the patient, but she remained still, lost in her dreams or nightmares. As I turned to leave, I heard it again. Laughter, echoing louder and more unsettling than before. It had become a cacophony, clattering against the walls, pushing me to run. Determined to escape, I stumbled backwards, colliding with the doorframe. It felt like something invisible held me there. I could hardly breathe as the laughter transformed into a warped shriek. I blinked, trying to clear my mind. Then, the door swung shut behind me. I gasped, swinging around to face the room again. But this time, it was empty. The bed was unmade, the sheets thrown aside as if someone had vacated the room in a hurry. I felt a wave of dread. It was clear now. No one had been there. Rushing back to the nurse's station, I could feel that familiar watching presence again. I fumbled for my phone, my fingers shaking. It felt like a million eyes were staring from the walls, hungry for something I couldn't quite understand. I dialed my supervisor, but the line was dead. Panic surged. I looked around for another colleague, but the hallway was empty, just shadows stretching before me. Then I heard it again, a low voice whispering my name. Maya. It was chilling to recall the name from the note. Who was she? What did she want? The shadow of dread settled over me, and I turned sharply, ready to run. The laughter echoed once more, louder than ever. But before I could move, the lights darkened. The darkness felt alive. It wrapped around me, thick and suffocating. I squinted, trying to make out shapes in the gloom, but all I could see were the silhouettes of the hospital furniture distorted by the shadows. My heart raced as instinct kicked in. I turned, bolting towards the nearest exit. The laughter that had haunted me followed, echoing through the hallway like a lingering specter. I pressed my back against the wall, my breath quickening. I could feel the coldness of the air pressing against my skin, as if something were hovering just inches away. A flicker of light broke through the darkness. It appeared again, a faint glow coming from one of the patient rooms down the hall. I hesitated, torn between the urge to flee and the undeniable pull towards the light. Curiosity had always made me reckless. Gathering what little courage I had left, I crept towards the illuminated room, the laughter fading, but not disappearing. As I reached the door, I took a moment to listen, my heart pounding like a drum. The air felt charged with electricity, mixed with an unsettling tension. Then I pushed the door open. Inside, the room was filled with a strange glow. A monitor flickered on the wall, its numbers and lines jumping erratically. My breath caught in my throat as I moved closer, studying the display. It didn't belong to anyone in this ward. I quickly scanned the room. It was otherwise empty, just a bed neatly made with crisp white sheets. As I turned, something fluttered by my ear. I flinched, my instincts telling me to duck. The moment hung heavy for a second before I realized it was only a chart, caught in the weird draft. I took a deep breath, feeling foolish for my reaction. Then I noticed a figure in the corner. A small girl stood there, her dark hair falling over her face. She was about the same age as my niece. "Help me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft beeping of the monitor. Fear rooted me to the spot. I strained to see her clearly, but the shadows seemed to clutch at her figure. "What do you need?" I managed to stammer, my voice shaky. "Find Maya," she said. "She's in trouble. She needs you." With that, the lights flickered again, and I blinked. The girl was gone. Just like that. My heart sank as panic shot through me. Was this real? I had so many questions swirling in my mind. Who was she? How did she know Maya? Before I could comprehend what had just happened, the air grew thicker, almost suffocating. I stumbled into the hallway again, the laughter growing louder. The lights above me flickered back to life, and I rushed past the now darkened room, adrenaline fueling my flight. I had to find Maya. If there was any hope of unraveling this mystery, I needed answers. But where would I even start? A sudden chill ran down my spine, and I froze as I heard footsteps approaching behind me. They were slow and deliberate. Turning slowly, I felt dread twist in my stomach. I wasn't alone anymore. I turned, my stomach dropping. The footsteps echoed in the silence, heavy and slow. My eyes swept the empty hall, searching for anything. but all I could see were ominous shadows stretching and twisting, as if they were alive. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. "Who's there?" I finally managed to call out, my voice barely a whisper. Silence wrapped around me like a blanket, thick and chilling. Then, just as I thought I was imagining things, I saw a figure moving toward me. A man. Or at least I thought he was a man. He was dressed in scrubs that looked almost too big for his frame. His face was obscured by the dim light, but I could feel his eyes on me. Cold. Calculating. The laughter returned, a soft cackle that sent shivers down my spine. "Looking for someone?" he asked, and his voice sent a jolt of fear through me. Goosebumps spread over my arms. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. "Maya!" I blurted out, the name spilling from my lips unbidden. "I need to find her." A smirk broke over his lips, a grotesque twist that felt wrong. "Oh, she's nearby," he said, his tone dripping with mockery. "Just follow the sound of the laughter." Behind him the lights flickered, and the shadows looked like they expanded, creeping closer. I felt the pull of terror alongside a desperate need to search for Maya. Whatever this man knew, I needed to figure it out. "Why are you doing this?" He didn't answer. Instead, he just stood there, his smirk fading into an unsettling stillness. The footsteps I had heard became distant again, swallowed by the oppressive darkness. I finally found the will to move, pushing past him. My heart thumped wildly in my chest as I rushed down the hallway. The laughter, once a mere echo, now felt like it was all around me. Voices whispered, murmured secrets I couldn't understand. I pressed onward, feeling disoriented. The map of the hospital that I thought I knew so well was changing, the walls bending and shifting. Then I saw a door ajar at the end of the hall, light spilling out from the small crack. With one last look over my shoulder, I headed toward it. I stepped inside and froze. It was a small storage room, shelves lined with medical supplies. But something shifted in the corner of my eye. That's when I saw it, I thought. A small piece of paper fluttering on the floor, half hidden under a box. I knelt, my pulse racing as I grabbed it, expecting the worst. My breath caught as I read the scrawled words. "Help Maya before it's too late." The room began to shake, and I could hear that man's laughter again, this time mixed with the sound of urgent footsteps approaching from behind. I shot up, the paper clutched tightly in my hand. I had to move. But where? Searching for answers, I felt the darkness closing in. I darted back out into the hall, but suddenly everything went dark. I stood in the pitch black, heart racing. I blinked, waiting for the darkness to lift, but it stayed thick and suffocating. The silence pressed against my ears, and I could feel the weight of dread creeping in. Then, a flicker. The emergency lights buzzed to life, casting a dim glow and revealing the chaos around me. Boxes were overturned, and papers littered the floor. I fought back panic, clutching the small piece of paper in my hand like a lifeline. "Maya!" I whispered, feeling sick. Where had she gone? I backed away from the storage room, scanning the hallway, desperate for any sign of her. The laughter echoed again, but this time it was louder, more sinister. That's when I heard a crash, glass shattering somewhere on my left. The sound sliced through the air, and I glanced in that direction, my instincts screaming for me to run. But I needed to know. I moved toward the sound, my heart pounding in my throat. Each step felt heavier than the last as uncertainty gnawed at my mind. The laughter faded, replaced by a low, guttural sound that churned my stomach. I crept further down the hall, following the path I had walked countless times before. Around the corner, I found a door slightly ajar. Hesitating, I peered inside. It was a supply room, oddly disorganized, but what caught my attention was the small shadow huddled in the far corner. "Maya!" I called out, hopeful. But the figure didn't move. I stepped closer, my pulse quickening. "Maya, is that you?" The shadow stirred, and a face emerged from the darkness. It was a woman, but not Maya. Her eyes were wide with fear, and she shook her head. "Get out! He's coming!" I didn't have time to understand. I turned to flee, but the moment I did, the door slammed shut behind me. Panic surged. I banged my fists against the cold metal, but it wouldn't budge. "What do you mean, he's coming?" I shouted, my voice trembling. The woman glanced over my shoulder, eyes pleading. "Just run!" she screamed. And that's when I felt it. A presence behind me. I spun around, my breath hitching in my throat, as I saw the shadowy figure step into the glow of the emergency lights. It was the man from before, his face now fully visible in the harsh illumination. His eyes gleamed with malice, and he wore a twisted smile. "You shouldn't have come here," he said coolly. "You're too late." My heart raced. I was trapped. The woman in the corner was visibly shaking, and I realized he wasn't just here for me. "Let us go," I demanded, my voice growing fiercer despite my fear. He chuckled softly, taking a step closer. "Oh, but I think you'll find this place has a way of keeping people, especially those who seek out the truth." Suddenly, the room shook again, and I felt the ground beneath me tremble. The lights began to flicker, followed by the unmistakable sound of laughter echoing around us. Then everything went cold. I was lost in the dark once again. The laughter morphed into a chant, the words wrapping around me like a vice. "Help Maya. Help Maya. Help Maya." I couldn't breathe, and terror clawed at my chest. But then, like a sudden flare in the night, a loud crash echoed. The woman screamed. I had to act fast. Adrenaline surged, and I threw myself against the door one more time, pushing with all my strength. The door burst open, and I stumbled into the hall, gasping for air. But the laughter didn't fade. It followed me as I dashed away, and I could hear the man's voice behind me, growing distant yet terrifyingly close. Help is just a whisper away. The urgency pulsed in my veins. Where was Maya? I had to find her, had to discover what truth lay shrouded in this nightmare. The shadows loomed, and the laughter echoed in my mind. I sprinted down the hallway, my breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. Every shadow felt like it was closing in, the laughter twisting, taunting me. I needed to find Maya. The memory of her smile pushed me onward through the chaos. As I rounded another corner, I spotted a flicker of movement out of the corner of my eye. My heart skipped. I turned to see a figure slip into an adjacent room. Was it the woman from the supply room? Or, worse, was it the man? I couldn't afford to hesitate. I approached the door cautiously, peeking inside. The flickering lights barely illuminated the cluttered break room. Chairs were overturned, and the vending machine lay on its side, broken glass glistening like teeth on the floor. I stepped inside and called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" Silence. The kind of silence that hung heavy in the air, making my skin crawl. I took a step further, but the sound of low, rhythmic banging caught my attention. My eyes were drawn to the supply closet at the far end, the door rattling violently. I hesitated again, fear coiling in my stomach. But I had to know. "Maya?" I whispered, hoping desperately for a response. The banging grew louder, followed by a disembodied voice that rasped, "Help. Me." Against every instinct screaming at me to run, I edged toward the closet. I reached for the handle, taking a deep breath before yanking it open. Thick darkness poured out, and I blinked, trying to adjust. Inside, a shape was crumpled on the floor. It was another woman, her hair matted and her clothes torn. "He's coming for you," she gasped, eyes wild with terror. "You need to leave." I stepped back, the weight of her words crashing over me. I couldn't leave. "What do you mean? Who is he?" Her gaze shifted past me, and she shook her head, panic rising in her voice. "You don't understand. He feeds on fear. If you stay, he'll take you too." Before I could respond, the emergency lights flickered and dimmed, almost plunging us back into darkness. My instincts kicked in. I had to get out. "Stay here," I told her, backing away. That's when I heard it again, the sound of swift footsteps, growing louder as they approached. I didn't wait to see who it was. I bolted from the break room and back down the hallway, adrenaline flooding my veins. I reached the main area and skidded to a halt. My eyes darted around, searching for any sign of Maya, but the eeriness hung thick. The laughter had faded, replaced by a low, almost melodic hum that vibrated through the floor. Then, through the chaos, I spotted something glowing at the far end of the corridor. A soft light pulsed rhythmically from behind another door, almost inviting. I felt drawn to it, but wariness crept back into my mind, I moved closer, and as I approached, I noticed the paper in my hand fluttering slightly. It was the note I had found earlier, the words unreadable through my jittering hands, yet I sensed it was important. With every step, the humming grew louder, clearer. I hesitated, my heart in my throat. What if it was a trap? But what if it was a clue? I was about to turn back when I noticed the door creak open a fraction, revealing a glimpse of the light beyond. Something inside urged me to move. Then I heard the laughter again, this time closer, insistent. I had to make a choice. Would I risk confronting whatever lay behind that door? Or would I head back to search for Maya and the threat that loomed behind me? I grasped the note tightly, feeling the urgency swell within me. I took a deep breath and pushed the door open, the hinges creaking in protest. The light spilled out, warm and bright, contrasting sharply with the darkness that surrounded me. For a moment, the hum stopped as though the room itself was catching its breath, waiting for me to step through. I took a hesitant step inside. The light revealed a small, cluttered office filled with old medical equipment and papers strewn everywhere. The faint smell of antiseptic hung in the air, but something else felt off, faintly sweet, yet sickly. A chill ran down my spine. At the center of the room stood a desk with a computer screen glowing softly, details flashing across it. I approached it, drawn by a compulsion I couldn't explain. The words, "Subject Maya," were emblazoned on the screen, and I felt the hairs on my arms stand on end. There was a video playing, shaky and grainy, showing a woman who looked just like Maya. She was sitting in a dimly lit room, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not afraid," she said, voice barely above a whisper. The screen flickered, and I leaned in closer, heart pounding. Suddenly, the door behind me slammed shut. I jumped, spinning around to see the silhouette of a man standing in the doorway. My breath caught in my throat as I locked eyes with him. His face was obscured by shadows, but I could see a wicked smile stretching across his lips. "Hello?" he said, his voice smooth and chilling. "I was wondering when you'd find this little room." I felt trapped, panic coursing through me. "What do you want?" I blurted out, my voice a mixture of defiance and terror. "Just to give you a glimpse," he replied, taking a step forward. "You're about to learn a lot about fear." The laughter returned, louder now, echoing in my ears, drowning out my thoughts. I glanced back at the screen, where Maya looked increasingly distressed, shaking her head. "You have to get out," she pleaded, her eyes pleading with me through the screen. "No!" I shouted, turning back to the man. "What have you done to her?" He tilted his head, amusement flickering in his eyes. "Oh, she's safe for now. But soon, she'll understand fear just like you will." I needed to escape. This wasn't just a confrontation. It was a game to him. I backed away slowly, my focus darting between the man and the window behind him. I could feel the weight of his gaze pressing down on me, and dread built in my chest. "Where do you think you're going?" he taunted as I grabbed a chair and hurled it at the window. The glass shattered with a loud crash, and I jumped through just as he lunged toward me. I landed hard on the ground outside, breathless. The taste of fear lingered in my throat as I scrambled to my feet, the laughter now a cacophony ringing in my ears. I could see the figures in the window, shadows moving behind the shards of glass. I didn't want to look back, but I couldn't help it. The man was watching me, that wicked smile still plastered across his face. I turned and ran, the twisted path back through the hospital now more daunting than ever. As I raced down the corridor, I felt the note crumpled in my hand. I needed to find Maya, now more than ever. If I wasn't careful, I might end up just like her, lost in fear, trapped forever. That's when I heard it. A voice whispered my name from the darkness ahead. "Help me," the voice echoed in the narrow corridor. "Help me." It was low and urgent, making my skin crawl. I hesitated, my heart racing. Part of me wanted to run, to get as far away from this cursed place as possible. But another part, the part that wanted to save Maya, pulled me forward into the shadows. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. The silence that followed felt thick, pressing against me. I readied myself to turn back when I heard it again, louder this time. "Help me! Please! It was coming from a door slightly ajar on my left. Against my better judgment, I moved closer, heart pounding like a drum. I stared at the door, uncertainty swirling in my gut. I pushed it open just a crack, the hinges creaking mournfully. The room was dark, but I could make out a figure sprawled on the floor. "Maya," I whispered, stepping inside. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, and I could see her lying there. But it wasn't her. This woman had disheveled hair, a white hospital gown stained with something dark, and a wild look in her eyes that reminded me far too much of the video. "It's not safe," she cried out, reaching for me. "You need to hurry. He'll find you." "Who?" I asked, instinctively taking a step back. The woman's gaze flicked over my shoulder, and her face twisted in fear. "Run!" she screamed, and before I could react, the lights flickered, and the door slammed shut behind me. A low rumble echoed in the room, shaking the walls. "Get away from her!" A voice boomed, and I froze, turning to see the man from the office standing in the doorway, his smile wider. "Did you think you could escape so easily?" I could feel the room closing in, shadows spilling from the corners. The woman on the floor scrambled toward me, her hands clawing at the air. "They can't see you if you don't move," she cried, but I was too transfixed by the man. "Why are you doing this?" I shouted, feeling the panic rising in my throat. "Because this is all part of the fun." He stepped closer, his presence palpable. "You see, fear makes you alive. You'll learn that soon enough." Suddenly, the woman lunged at him, teeth bared. "No! Don't let him take you!" She reached for me, grabbing my wrist with a grip like iron. I could feel her desperation, a coldness spreading over my skin. "Let her go!" I yelled, but in that moment, the lights flickered again, plunging the room into darkness. I felt a shove from behind, and I stumbled toward the door, my instincts kicking in. The sound of her desperate pleas mixed with the man's chilling laughter filled my ears. I hurled myself against the door, my heart hammering in my chest. With a forceful push, the door burst open, and I tumbled out into the corridor, gasping for breath. The dark stretch before me was empty, but I could hear the laughter behind me, echoing into the night. I had to keep moving. Maya was still out there, and I couldn't let myself get trapped again. Then I saw a flicker of movement in the distance, just beyond the end of the hallway. A shadow darted away, and with it came a familiar sense of urgency. I took off, following the figure, hoping against hope that it would lead me to Maya. But as I sped forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that something worse waited just around the corner. I sprinted down the long corridor, each step echoing against the sterile walls. The flicker of movement had vanished, but I could still feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. I needed to find Maya. I needed to know she was safe. My heart raced faster than my feet could carry me. I came to a junction where two hallways met. I hesitated, looking left and right. A low growl echoed from the left, sending a chill down my spine. I glanced to the right, and it was dark, but there was a faint glimmer at the end. I had to make a choice. I took a deep breath and turned right. The hallway narrowed, closing in around me. I felt the walls pressing against my lungs as I moved deeper into the shadows. That's when I saw it. A door slightly ajar, just like before. I pushed the door open, but it led to an empty utility room. Mops and buckets lined the walls, and I could smell the harsh scent of bleach. As I turned to leave, a whisper floated through the air. "Help me." My blood ran cold. I stepped back, listening intently. It was coming from the other side of the room. Cautiously, I approached the sound, moving slowly so as not to make any noise. I peered beneath a shelf and gasped. There, in the corner, lay an old, bloodied bandage. Panic gripped me. I remembered the woman from before, the one who warned me. My instincts screamed at me not to linger. Then I heard it. Footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoing down the corridor. My breath hitched. "No. Please," I muttered under my breath. "Not now." I needed to get out. I slipped out of the utility room, my heart pounding like a drum. I scanned the hallway, but the footsteps were growing closer. I turned to my right, sprinting toward the closest exit. As I ran, a loud crash echoed behind me. I glanced back in horror. The door of the utility room slammed shut. A shiver ran down my spine as I pushed forward, the sounds of chaos filling the space. I knew I had to keep running. Then I spotted a staircase. I dashed toward it, taking the steps 2 at a time. The echo of my footfalls bounced off the walls, but the sound of pursuit was still close behind. Just when I thought I was safe, I reached the top, and the door to the roof was slightly ajar. I could feel the cool, nighttime air pouring in, a stark contrast to the chaos behind me. I flung the door open and stepped outside. The stars twinkled above, and I paused for a second to breathe in the fresh air. But the solitude didn't last. "Where do you think you're going?" The voice slithered through the darkness, unnerving in its calmness. I turned slowly, dread pooling in my stomach. There he was, the man from before, standing at the door with that twisted grin plastered across his face. I took a step back, heart racing. "No, stay away from me!" But he stepped forward, blocking the exit. "That's not the right question," he said, his voice icy. "You should be asking where your friend is." I felt a cold wave wash over me, and all my instincts screamed that I was so close to uncovering something horrifying. "What have you done to her?" I shouted, but he only chuckled, the sound echoing in the still night. The laughter mixed with the distant whispers I thought I had left behind. "What if I told you she was right here with me?" That's when I noticed the shadows creeping around him, pulling closer. I felt desperation clawing at my chest. I had to escape, but I also needed answers. I took a step back, and in that moment, a thought ignited within me like a spark. If I could just figure this out, maybe I could save Maya. But knowing that rush of desperate hope could lead to my downfall was unsettling. I had no idea what awaited me next. The roof was cold beneath my feet as I stood, the wind swirling around me like invisible fingers. The night sky stretched endlessly above, and my heart raced while the man's laughter echoed ominously in my ears. I could feel the shadows creeping closer, dulling the glimmer of the stars. "What if she is here?" I whispered, the crushing weight of misunderstanding clawing at my mind. "Ah, clever girl," he taunted, stepping forward. "You see, this place has a way of keeping its secrets, just like it keeps its patience." I clenched my fists, unwilling to succumb to fear. "Where is Maya?" I demanded, my voice stronger than I felt. "That depends," he said, a twisted glee dancing in his eyes. "Are you ready to learn the truth?" His enigmatic tone sent chills down my spine, but I shook off my uncertainty. I studied him, the shadows around his form pulsating with menace. "Let her go," I shouted, desperation seeping through. "If she's really here, I'll do anything." He paused, a dark smile spreading across his face. "Anything? Now that's interesting." He took another step forward, melding with the shadows as he gestured toward the edge of the roof. "But you can only save one of you. Choose wisely." I stumbled back, confusion swirling in my mind. "What do you mean?" "The more you seek, the more you'll understand," he said. "But if you're not careful, you'll find yourself lost in the dark, just like your friend." The weight of his words settled heavily in the air. I felt the icy grip of terror claw at my chest. I needed to see Maya, needed to save her before it was too late. "Where do I find her?" I asked, my voice trembling, but resolute. "Follow the laughter," he said, his grin widening, an unsettling glimmer of promise and threat mixed. Before I could respond, the entire rooftop seemed to tremble. The ground shifted, and I barely stayed on my feet. "What are you doing?" I cried, clutching the railing behind me. The darkness wrapped around him, thickening until he was almost entirely obscured. "The choice is yours," came his voice from the swirling shadows. "Make it quickly." I had to run. I darted toward the door I had used to escape, but the darkness lashed out, curling around my ankles like living tendrils. Just as it tightened, I kicked free, the pain spurring me back down the stairwell. I raced through the corridors, each step reverberating in the stillness, unsure of where I was headed. The twisted familiarity of the hospital weighed heavily on me. I spotted an exit sign glowing eerily in the distance. Bursting through the emergency exit, I dashed into the vacant lot behind the building. The night air was thick and oppressive, but I could still feel the laughter echoing somewhere nearby. A chilling, beckoning melody. Suddenly the laughter shifted, transforming into whispered cries that wrapped around me like vines. "Help me. Please." I froze, scanning the area. "Maya?" As if in answer, the shadows deepened, forming a path away from the building. Against my instincts, I stepped forward, fueled by a fierce determination to uncover the mystery that lay ahead. The whispers grew clearer, leading me toward another part of the hospital. An old, dilapidated wing that appeared neglected, almost lost to time. This felt wrong, and yet, a part of me knew that if Maya was close, I had to find her here. Pushing past a rotting door, I found myself in a dimly lit hallway. Memories of the laughter echoed ominously, but amidst them was a desperate voice. "Please, help!" "Maya!" I shouted, racing down the corridor. The light flickered overhead, and I could feel the atmosphere grow thicker as I approached a solitary door at the end. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. What awaited me inside? The laughter and whispers wouldn't dissipate. They were alive, filling the air with urgency, chaos, and despair. With a final deep breath, I swung the door open. Inside was a small room, and standing in its shadows was Maya, trembling and disoriented. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You found me, but—" Then the shadows closed in, deeper than before, spinning around us until all I could see was darkness. The laughter raged like a tempest. "Maya!" I called out, reaching for her, but the enveloping darkness twisted and locked us apart. "Come find us!" Maya's voice echoed faintly, fading as the shadows swallowed her whole. The room was lost in gloom, and I was left with nothing but the overwhelming echo of the man's laugh, fading into silence. The questions remained, swirling in my mind. Was she truly there? Had I failed to save her? With that dread solidifying in my chest, I stumbled back into the hallway. My only company the whispering echoes of the dark, unanswered mysteries. Would I ever walk away from this? I would have to live with the unease of the unknown. The laughter still lingered, beckoning me with promises of clarity that I might never achieve. The truth remained hidden, and as I stepped back outside, the night whispered secrets just beyond my grasp. It would never truly let me go.